Hi guys, hope you had a good half term. I'm going to try something a little different this week. We're going to do a little bit of a recap on some of the theories that we've looked at. So a little bit of a kind of test. You need to write a little bit here. As we go through this PowerPoint, you'll need to pause it and answer the kind of the task on each slide. Okay, so let's crack on. So the theorists, sorry, that we've studied so far, we've looked at quite a few. We've looked at Roland Barthes, semiotics, signs, signifiers, connotations, things like that. Do you remember all that? A sign is made up of the signifier and the signified, all of that. If you don't remember any of this, you can go back and look at the old PowerPoints and refresh yourself. I'll kind of explain a bit as we go through to maybe jog your memory. So that was Roland Barthes, semiotics, signs, signifiers, all that stuff. Stuart Hall, reception theory, cough, the preferred, the negotiated, and the oppositional reading. Do you remember that? So how you can have different readings to an image, different responses. Steve Neal's genre theory, pretty simple this one. He just spoke about genre and how there were similarities and differences and how a genre would evolve over time. But basically, he's talking about conventions and similarities and things, and how things of the same genre, different films within the same genre, different texts within the same genre, will have similarities and differences. And he gets the theory for that. Well done, Steve. Very basic. Moving on, Liebert van Zunen, feminist theory. So she said basically that there are learnt roles, gender roles in the media. So women might learn how to become women, act like women. Men would act like, how to act like men through the media. Also, she talked about sexualization of women in the media and how they're objectified and fragmented, sexualized in the media. Moving on, we've got bell hooks with her feminist theory. And just to draw your attention, look at bell hooks without the capital letters. Remember that if you're talking about bell hooks, she doesn't use capital letters, so we're going to make sure we do that. So bell hooks said um, that it was important to attack the sort of male patriarchy. So it was important to kind of push the image of women um, in the media. So whenever you see an image where um, the representation of women is being in some way subverted or furthered in some way, you could apply her theory. She also said that women of colour had it a lot harder than white women, and that women of colour were tended to be seen as sort of lesser in some way. Moving on, but keeping with the ethnicity, we've got Paul Gilroy and his ethnicity and post-colonialism. So he said that there are still traits of colonialism within the media today. You can still see traits of colonialism, um, and yeah, this affects the representation of ethnicities in media texts. David Gauntlet, who we looked at last week, he says that the media is used to identify with, so people can identify with the media. They can sort of talk about themselves in terms of what they consume. So they create their identity through that. They can also identify with people in the media and storylines, and they can sort of learn more about themselves. So you might learn about how to deal with depression, or you might learn how to um, how to act in any given situation through the media. Also, you might see yourself reflected in some way in the representation on screen and be able to identify with it in that sense. He also said that with more varied representations, there's more chance of this, and we're getting more varied representations in the media today. So you'll see a range of representations of masculinity, of femininity, of ethnicity, of disability, all different things. Okay, so that's sort of what we covered. As I say, if you want to go into that any more in depth, then you can either go back and watch previous PowerPoints, or you can Google those, YouTube that stuff. There are some other very good videos. I'm not just the only one who makes videos on these. Other teachers do it. There's Mrs. Fisher's very, very good. I won't feel offended if you want to watch any of her YouTube stuff. They are very good. So that's it. We have talked about other theorists as well, but they are the main ones. Okay, so we will move on. So, what to do in this task? Okay, so on each slide, I'm going to show you an image. So, I want you to look at the image. You will be prompted to apply one of the theorists and their theories. And what I want you to do is to write a very brief paragraph explaining the theory, if possible, and applying it to the image. And you need to do this for each image. So you will need to stop this at different stages probably and write the paragraph, then move on to the next one. Don't just watch this all the way through and then try to do it. That would be very, very hard. So pause it on each slide as we go through. I'll be here to kind of introduce it and read through the stuff with you. And then if you pause it, cough, and write the paragraph. It shouldn't take too long. Maybe it's I don't know how many words for each section you'll do. Possibly 100. No, certainly no more. Okay, let's move on then. Semiotics. So this is a picture of Sid Vicious from the punk band the Sex Pistols from the 70s, late 70s. He's quite a character, sort of icon of pop. Blimey, not pop. He ain't no Justin Bieber. He's an icon of punk. That's what I was trying to say. Sort of icon of punk. Interesting character, scary kind of character. If you look at his image, there are quite a few different signifiers there. Different signs, his costume, his hair, other symbols you might notice, things he's holding, his expression maybe. What I want you to do is I want you to apply Roland Barthes' semiotics to this image. So what are the different signifiers and what do they convey? Try and think of the different kind of meanings that you might get from this and what it might apply, how you could apply semiotics, I should say. So a little paragraph applying semiotics to that rather interesting character Sid Vicious. You need to pause it here. Okay, so you did that one. Excellent. So we're on to the next one now. You get a feel for this. If you are just watching these through and not pausing it, it will be quite tricky. You will need to go back. But, up to you, however you want to do it. On to the next one, genre theory. So this is a poster for the post-modern zombie rom-com, Shaun of the Dead. Edgar Wright's film. I think it came out in about 2007, something like that. I'm not too sure, actually. Please apply Steve Neal's genre theory to this poster. So how is it the same but different? What are the signifiers of the genre? So try and guess what the genre is. I sort of said, oh, that was a message there I received. I sort of said what the genre is actually if you haven't seen the film. So it's a zombie rom-com. So what are the signifiers there? And how would you say that the genre has evolved somewhat? And pause it again. Okay, next one. Reception theory. Here is a sign we're all becoming very familiar with now, seeing these up all over the place. So please apply Stuart Hall's reception theory to this image. What is the preferred, the negotiated, and the oppositional reading to this image? And pause the slides again. Or don't. Totally your free choice, but probably best you do. Feminist theory. So this is a poster for what is a sort of, a generic James Bond poster. It's not for a particular film, just for the brand of James Bond, I guess. But please apply Lisbeth Van Zoonen's feminist theory to this image. So what is it that she said about women and how they were used in the media? So how are women used in the media? And how does this image sort of show that, I guess? Also, does this link to another theorist we may have mentioned, Laura Mulvey? So that's another theorist that we've sort of mentioned, not one of the main ones. We talked about her a bit with Lisbeth Van Zoonen. She had a theory on the male gaze. So maybe you can write a little bit about those two. And pause the slides here. Another feminist theory slide here. So this is the character Ripley, played by Sigourney Weaver in the amazing film Aliens. If you haven't seen this film, you really need to check it out. I'm not too sure when Aliens came out. It must be about maybe 1980. The first one came out in, I think, 78, Alien, the first one. And the second one, I think, 1980, around about that time. Very early representation of a strong. Well, I won't say too much more actually, but a very good film you should watch. Um, and here we have Ripley in this picture, just about to confront the big mother alien, and she's holding Newt, the little child there that she's rescued. That's almost, I guess, her sort of surrogate daughter, and she's about to fight off the aliens like a real, true female hero. So, could you please apply Bell Hook's feminist theory to this image? How does it subvert dominant ideologies towards women in film? Okay, there we go. And pause it again. Ethnicity and post-colonialism. So this is an interesting image from a kind of slightly controversial film. Not really. I mean, it's Gone with the Wind, which is one of the best films ever made. Really. Well, it's the highest grossing film if you adjust for time. I think of all time. I think this film made a lot more than Avengers Endgame and Infinity War combined almost, given the time that it was made. So it came out in 1940, and if you adjust the amount of money that it made and put it into today's currency, I think it still made more than those films. So it's massively popular. The actress playing the servant there actually, I think she won an Oscar for this film, and I don't know if she was allowed to go in and pick the Oscar up, something like that. Or there was some controversy about her around her getting it due to her ethnicity. This film's also a bit controversial at the moment because Hulu, or whoever own it now, Amazon, Hulu, not too sure who, Lou, whoever owns it and streams it, they've decided to pull it. So Gone with the Wind is no longer available to be viewed because of the depiction here and throughout. So maybe you can apply Paul Gilroy's theory to this image and explain what he was suggesting in regards to this image here. And pause the slides. I think you're probably getting bored of me saying pause now, aren't you? Theories of identity. So this is what we spoke about last week. This is Dave Gauntlets. So this is the album cover of David Bowie's 1973 album Aladdin Sane. You might recognise this from the classroom. I've got a poster of this on the wall. It's not my favourite David Bowie album. I don't know what my favourite David Bowie album is. You're probably not that interested. Station to Station, I would imagine, is my favourite. But I like this era. This is good. But I'm kind of more into the later stuff. Anyway, I've got that tattoo. I've got the tattoo of the lightning bolt on my wrist. That's where that's from. Bit of semiotics. Anyway, David Bowie's album Aladdin Sane. David Bowie was a very controversial and interesting character because he had many different representations and pushed the boundaries of gender and representation of masculinity and how a rock star could look and how an outsider could look. Lots of different things. Lots of people identified with that. So maybe you could apply Paul. You could apply David Gauntlet's theory to this image. So what was his theory? Well, his theory was theory of identities. How could you apply his theory to this image? Or David Bowie as a whole? So there you go, that's it. There's no more writing once you've done that. I hope that wasn't too hard. There are a couple of other theorists that we've mentioned this year so far that aren't in this test, so let's just talk about them. Other theorists and theories we've discussed. So there was Todorov, do you remember that? The narrative structure thing, equilibrium, disruption, search, resolution, new equilibrium. It's really about film. If you watch most mainstream films, they tend to follow that pattern. With TV, you need to think about just how is the story delivered to us. So is it one and done story like Friends? The story starts and ends in the same episode. Is it like EastEnders and it just goes on forever with cliffhangers? Is it like The Walking Dead and it's in seasons? Is it a two-parter? Think if it was TV, you need to think about that. But Todorov specifically spoke about equilibrium, disruption, search, resolution, new equilibrium, and really that works best for movies. I actually watched 1917 again the other day, and it works so well for that film. I love 1917; it's a great film, but it really works well for that film. In fact, yeah, we'll talk about that later. Prop, we've talked about him. Vladimir Prop, character types: hero, villain, helper, princess, princess father, donor, dispatcher, false hero. Character types. So yeah, again, it's really a film thing, not hugely useful for media, but it does let you think about other kind of archetypes and character types used in the media. So what are sort of general archetypes you might see? You know, the bully character in things, or the grumpy politician, the right wing politician, the gun crazy American, sort of stereotypes, character types, archetypes. It gets you thinking in those terms. Claude Levi Strauss, much more relevant for what we're talking about. We may do a special presentation on him later on PowerPoint, but basically he's just saying that in the media, drama is conveyed or created through opposition. So you will see opposition in texts. So whether that be, Star Wars is, the dark side versus the light side, Luke versus Darth, Obi-Wan versus Darth, Sith versus Jedi, Rebels versus Alliance, um, the Empire, all that. Opposites like that. It could be that. It could be in a story about the election in the US at the moment. It could be Trump versus Biden, Republicans versus Democrats, right versus left, pro-life versus pro-choice, gun nuts versus ban the gun, any of that stuff. Um, you might see that in an article written about the election. Lots of conflict in things. Um, so that was that. Vows. Vows is the values, attitudes, and lifestyles of audiences. So I'm not too sure if we spoke about this yet in the first year, but we will do. So if it's unfamiliar to you in the first year, do not worry. We will get to this. We will get to this. It's ways of describing audience members and what they sort of seek out, how they like to, the pleasures they like to receive from products, mainly products, but also from media texts. So in the second years, we'll remember this probably because we went through it fairly recently. We also have the social economic scale, which is another audience thing. It's way about talking about the audience. Instead of sort of saying upper class, middle class, and working class, you tend to say sort of A's, B's, C1, C2, D's, and E's. And pretty much, most media texts are aimed at the C1s and C2s. But, in newspapers, you will see some move in that when we come to newspapers. So that's that. I hope that's all familiar to you. If not, again, you can YouTube that stuff. There are loads of videos out there. You can go back and watch any of our videos. You can ask me. But if you're familiar with, for the most part, all of that, and you can answer the questions on these slides, then you are doing very well. And we're plowing through the texts for the exam. You apply those theories in the exam, you would do excellent. So here's the final slide. Thank you. See you in class. Thanks a lot, guys. I know it's a bit of a long one today, a lot of writing, but it's well worth it. And see you this week. Thanks a lot. Bye.